Shabbat Shalom, everybody. Good morning. So nice to be together. You're going to, for this morning's drash, you're going to need your chumash in front of you. So I'm going to alert you now, page 127, because I can't have rustling of papers while I am preaching, okay? No, I'm just kidding. Page 127, the only thing you need to see on page 127 is the second to last line, the first word. It is a text that every year I seek to find new meaning in, and this year I think I have found it. So you'll need it for when we get to that moment in the sermon. So until then, let me just tell you that wouldn't it be great in life if everything had a spot? Like everything had a special place where it went. Now I want you to know just from personal experience that I am very, very good at finding things. If you ever lose anything in my house, I know where it is. And the reason why I'm so good at finding things is because I'm even better at losing things. And that's why I wish everything would have a specific spot. I also can't stand clutter. My mother, who's probably watching, will attest to this. She said that I was a secret slob. A secret slob meant that everything went into a drawer or into a closet, but wasn't necessarily folded or put away properly. I like when laundry goes in the basket. I like when dishes make it to the dishwasher. I like to make my bed every day. And somebody might refer to that as an obsessive compulsive disorder, but I don't think it gets to that level. I always put my keys in the exact same spot when I come home. And if by chance I'm still holding them when I get upstairs, I go back downstairs and put them in the basket where the keys go. And the reason for that is very simple. I like to know where things are when I need them. And so if I'm leaving the house to go somewhere and I have to then first start searching for where I did with my keys, that would be, to me, a waste of time. And so I always know where I put my glasses. I know where I put my credit cards. I know where I put my keys. But the truth is, no matter how hard I try and no matter how hard we all try to keep things in their designated spots, we realize that sometimes we do lose things. And the truth is that that's the nature of life, and that is that life is sometimes messy. And sometimes in our lives we learn to deal with the messiness, and sometimes we don't. So though every sermon I ever give has an ask for the order at the end, asking you to do something, I'm going to ask one little thing, and that is to give yourself a little bit of a break. To learn to live with what I would call the micro messiness in our lives. The big issues are going to be much more difficult to deal with. The large messiness is sometimes overwhelming. So today I'm going to ask you only to be micro-ambitious in dealing with accepting your messiness. Micro-acceptance, I would call it. This morning's Parashat starts, Vayu Chaye Sara 100 shana v'esrim shana v'sheva shanim shnei Chaye Sara. Sarah's lifetime was 127 years. And that was Sarah's life. The entirety of her life summed up in the fact that she made it 127 years, but we know so much more about Sarah's life. We know about the highs and the lows. We know the moments of deceit, the moments of lies, the moments of anger, the moments of betrayal, that she was both the perpetrator and the victim of. we know that Sarah's life did not have everything put in its proper spot. And the Midrash imagines the conversation between Isaac and his mother Sarah. Isaac comes home after the binding of Isaac's story, and Sarah says, "So where have you been?" So he said to her, "My father took me up and led me to the mountain, down the hills, and alas," she said, "for the son of a hapless woman. But had it not been for an angel, you would have been slain?" And Isaac says, "Yes." And then the Torah picks up, "V'tamat Sara b'kiryat arba hi Chevron be'eretz Canaan," and that's when Sarah died. You can imagine the extraordinary stress put on her by discovering that her husband wanted to kill her son. And in that moment, says the Midrash, that's when she collapsed and died. And Rashi writes, "And Abraham came to mourn for Sarah, and he wept for her." The telling of Sarah's death directly follows the binding of Isaac's story, because when Sarah was told of this moment, she wasn't prepared to hear of such extraordinary violence, and her life just escaped her. The roller coaster of her life finally comes to an end, and she can no longer bear the ride. And she dies. This was the words. These were the words. This was the story that was the straw that broke the camel's back. Sarah couldn't deal with the messiness of her life anymore. But there is this incredible aside in the Talmud that explicates the story a little bit further. De Amar Ravi Avin Kol HaMoser Din Al Chavero Hu Ne'enash Tchila. Rabbi Avin said that anyone who passes judgment on someone else, that person's going to be punished first. And then it goes on, Shne'emar V'tomar Sarai El Avram Chamasi Alayach. And Sarah said to Abraham, "My anger is on you." Rabbi Avin imagines a conversation. And we could pick out any number of times when Sarah might have said these exact words to Abraham. She could have said these words, "My anger is on you, Abraham, for making me make believe that I am your sister." We could have been at a different moment when Sarah might have said to Abraham, "I'm angry at you for making us leave the land we knew and go to some place we had no idea what would befall us." She might have at another moment in her life said to Abraham, "I'm angry at you because we were unable to have children. I told you to take Hagar, and you did. I didn't mean it. You couldn't possibly have thought that that was a real thing." You can imagine the many moments when Sarah might have been angry at Abraham. And so Rabbi Avin points out that the very next pasuk, Uchti ve'avo Abraham lispod l'Sara v'livkota, and Abraham came and he eulogized his wife and he cried. That's the verse that I want to focus on this morning. That he came to eulogize his wife and he cried. At Sarah's death, there is a moment of reckoning for Abraham. He eulogizes her and he cries, and we can easily hear the words that are left out of the text. We can imagine the eulogy that Abraham offers his wife. "Oh, Sarah, I am so sorry. Sarah, I'm sorry I degraded you. You were my companion and I abandoned you. You were my partner and I didn't see you. When you cried out, I was deaf to your needs. Oh, Sarah, I am so sorry. Much like the words that Moses offered on behalf of his sister Miriam when he said, Il na rifana la, God, please heal her. Those words, like these words, were insufficient and too late. And then he broke down crying. So often when people come to speak with me, in sharing their story, that's when they begin to cry. Almost without exception, people say to me, I don't even know why I'm crying. But that's how we get it out. Language may trigger tears, but tears trigger healing. And if the relationship between Abraham and Sarah was complicated, we can only imagine how difficult the relationship was between Abraham and Isaac. In fact, it's so bad that Abraham has to ask Eliezer, his servant, to find a wife for his son Isaac. From the time of the binding of Isaac's story, there seems to be no real interaction ever again between Isaac and Abraham. In many ways, their relationship is broken beyond repair. Abraham is wealthy and he's accomplished, but his family life is in shambles. In a subtle instruction, we see something extraordinary amplified. Ki el artzi ve'el moladati telech v'lakachta isha livnei liyitzchak. Abraham instructs Eliezer to go back to his family's home, the place where he was born, in order to find a wife for his son Isaac. Abraham asks Eliezer to find a wife for Isaac back in his own hometown, as if to suggest maybe there's some way to go back, start over again. What if we could all just start over again? But that can't be. Just as the title of Thomas Wolfe's book, which was published posthumously in 1940, said, you can never go home again. Yet there are two more details I want to draw your attention to. First, the role that promises play in this morning's Parashat, and second is a calligraphy issue. So while I speak of the role of promises, you can now look in your Chumash on page 127, the second to last line, the first word on that line. Twice, there seems to be an overemphasis on Abraham's inability to trust. Once with the people from whom he bought the land for Sarah's burial. And then with Eliezer, when he asks him to go and find a wife for his son Isaac. In both those locations, there is such an emphasis placed on trusting other people. You've heard the phrase so many times in your life, trustworthy people trust people. Abraham is not such a man. And it's Abraham who had to learn to live with it. You see, Sarah dies in the messiness, but Abraham has to live with this. See, Abraham so many times was deceitful in his life. And now it comes to haunt him that if he was deceitful, then therefore everyone else must be. And that's why promises become so important to Abraham. Now, the second half of the verse. It's here that I need you to look in the Chumash. If you look at that word that I have been pointing to so many times, the word v'liv kota. If you look closely, if you read Hebrew, you can see that the kaf is small there. And so many years in the past, I have suggested that the small kaf is simply the fact that Abraham chokes on the words. And therefore, it gets stuck in his throat. And the kaf doesn't really come out. But today I want to offer a different suggestion. Vayavo Avraham lispod l'Sara v'livkota. Abraham came to mourn for Sarah and to cry over her. And the commentaries from the medieval to the modern seek to explain the smaller kaf. Some suggesting, as Ibn Ezra does, that it was really supposed to be two separate words. Others, in the modern age, think that the small kaf is simply a scribal error. You see, what happened was, in copying over the Torah, somebody left out the kaf, but then the word made no sense. So later, somebody else had to squeeze it in order to make the word make sense. And so I would suggest that, yes, that's exactly what's going on there. We're trying to squeeze it in. We're trying to make a square peg fit into a round hole. That's the message of the small kaf. It appears to me that the kaf is trying to fit itself in, to find its spot. But no matter, we see the messiness of the font. We see the messiness of life. Some things still just feel out of place. Wouldn't it be great if we could all go back and rewrite our stories so that there was a fluid, seamless path to where we arrived at in our lives? Wouldn't it be great if there were no mistakes that we regretted? And sometimes we forget those moments in our lives. Sometimes we forget the mistakes that we've made, both consciously and subconsciously. Sometimes we drop something from our story, only to have someone who loves us very much remind us that we've left out an important detail. Look, sometimes I lose my glasses. That's why I have a spare set in the bedroom and a spare set in my office. Sometimes I even keep a spare set in my car. See, because glasses help me to see. They help me to see the world more clearly. But the one thing my glasses can never do is change the way the world actually is. I may choose to see my life. You may choose to see your life without the messiness, without the mistakes, without the complaints, without the obstructions, without the challenges. But you can't, because they're there, because life is messy. And each one of us has to learn to live with that messiness. No one in this world walks away unscathed. No one's life is a cakewalk. Everyone has mistakes that they have made, things that they have done, things that they have said that can never be unsaid, unheard, or undone. So the only thing left to do in our lives is to decide if we're going to be like Sarah or we're going to be more like Abraham. Are we going to live with the messiness of our lives, or is it going to overtake us? The challenges of life are difficult. Try to be a little more accepting of the mistakes you have made. And in the end, you'll find that you're more trusting of others' mistakes as well. And then we'll learn to live a more holy life. Shabbat Shalom. We continue with Musaf, page 184. Chatzi Kaddish, please rise.